Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, March 7th, 2025. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Ryan Grimm, co-founder and reporter at Dropsite News, co-host Counterpoints. Also on the program today, Trump flip-flops on tariffs again, and what increasingly looks like a rolling pump and dump scheme. Also on the program today, hot Republican on Republican action as Trump forced to pretend to put Musk on a leash.
Ew.
Yes, gross. Don't want to kink shame. Republicans finally admit government creates jobs by complaining of news stories about vets getting fired. Federal judge reverses the NLRB commissioner firing, and another federal judge in Rhode Island blocks Trump's funding freeze as unconstitutional. Meanwhile, said funding freeze threatens food safety. This according to the FDA. And as U.S. health organizations say, the freeze is hurting efforts to control Ebola in Uganda. Meanwhile, State Department bleeding its diplomatic corps now to close over a dozen consulates. Free speech Republicans launch an AI program to catch foreign students whose social media seems sympathetic to Palestinian independence. DoD efficiency alert. Untold man-hours deployed to scrub images of non-white guy military heroes. Speaking of efficiency, Elon Musk blows up another rocket at taxpayer expense. CDC tries to rehire 200 fired workers in a measles-spreading oopsie. Democratic establishment again angry at Democrats looking to protest Trump. And lastly, and this just breaking, Homeland Security supposedly ending collective bargaining with 50,000 TSA workers. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is
Casual Friday.
Casual Friday. I forgot.
Yes.
I honestly forgot what we called it.
The longest running thing we got around
I forgot what we called it. I knew it was Friday. I just forgot what the nickname we had for it was. Yeah, it's been.
I've only been doing it for about 30 years.
There's no more room
it's all right.
For knowledge anymore in our brains. I mean, I just think the information overload means some stuff has to go, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is, I think probably over the next 3 or 4 years is what the show is going to consist of me just, slowly degrading in my mental capacity. So people, that should be fun for folks.
I mean, we've been seeing it on the presidential level. Now we'll have it for 2 consecutive terms, and you can kind of, it'll be poetic.
I will carry the torch.
Yeah.
Speaking of watching, I mean, I don't know why I was so shocked by this. The Haitians who are living in Springfield, Ohio, are here on temporary protected status. We have talked about temporary protected status so many times on this program over the past, 10 years. Haitians, we've had Afghanis, we've had people from all around the world here on temporary protected status because they cannot go back to their homes because maybe there's been a massive natural catastrophe, or maybe there's tremendous political upheaval or whatnot. The temporary protected status program would be the easiest for the president to expand or contract at any given time, I think, of those programs, largely speaking. And it appears, despite the fact that he's already served one term, it's not like, I mean, let's be clear. Donald Trump was president already for 4 years. This is his second term, and he had time to bone up on stuff in those other 4 years. Like looking back, like, now that I think about it, I never knew about the whole elector thing, or that it would be that undocumented or illegal immigrants couldn't vote. I didn't know about that. Why didn't anybody tell me when I was president? But now I've taken some time. I'm reading more, and I'm boning up. Here he is in the White House. Was this yesterday?
Yeah. We headlined this yesterday.
One of his executive order signing powwows.
Right.
And, he's getting such plaudits from the press for being open to the press and be willing to answer questions. And part of the reason why he's able to do it is that the press doesn't seem to have the capacity to make him answer any questions.
Right.
Like they don't follow up on anything. And here is Donald Trump being asked about whether he's considering revoking temporary protected status for Ukrainians who are in this country because Russia invaded their country and has been showering them with bombs for 3 years.
TPS for the Ukrainians who live here in the U.S.
What about it?
Are you considering revoking the TPS status for the more than 200,000 Ukrainians who live here in the U.S.?
What are you saying?
The Ukrainians that are here in the U.S., they're under a TPS status.
On GPS?
TPS.
Oh, I thought you said GPS.
TPS.
Yeah.
Pause it for a second. Let's just, contemplate this. What are you saying? In other words, like, you're using 3 letters. I don't know what they mean. And I thought you meant GPS. Because of course, are you considering revoking GPS for the Ukrainians in this country? There's not enough of a hint. There's not enough context. Like, we know we have, and he's been, talking that he's going to boot out 240,000, I think it is, Ukrainians here. He's been talking about kicking them out, and maybe he's thinking like, did we tag them with GPS? Because he's so unfamiliar with the initials TPS that he actually thought it was GPS. I mean, this guy has absolutely no idea. So it's Stephen Miller who's running it, right?
Did you remember obviously last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, when a reporter asked him, will you be discussing AUKUS with the prime minister? And he didn't know what AUKUS meant either. I mean, the guy, I don't think he's been doing anything in these past 4 years except becoming more unhinged and more conspiratorial and more disconnected from, like, even the practical elements of being president. He's just in OANNville or Newsmaxville.
I mean, it really is. I think, like, there's a couple of things that I think we need to, really fully embrace as an understanding of just how stupid this guy is, and how obviously so much of what is happening in his administration is happening at the behest of other people. And he is just so easily swayed because he is either incapacitated mentally or incapacitated mentally, not by age. But go back a little bit, play this, because then, of course, like, he's lying about everything that follows from that. Go ahead.
On GPS?
TPS, temporary.
Oh, I thought you said GPS.
TPS.
Yeah.
There was some news saying that they were going to be revoked. And
he almost said right there, what's GPS?
Considering that for the
Well, we're not looking to hurt anybody. We're certainly not looking to hurt them. And I'm looking at that, and there were some people that think that's appropriate and some people don't, and I'll be making a decision pretty soon. Okay? Okay.
TPS.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, he's not been looking at it. What he just described was basically the dynamic you could describe for literally anything that exists in any sphere at any time. There are people for it and there are people against it. And I'm going to look at that. I mean, of course, he's not looking at it. He has no idea what they're talking about.
No, he's got no idea. And Stephen Miller was on Fox News last night on Sean Hannity's program, just absolutely like dripping at the mouth to talking about the deportation of pro-Palestine demonstrators from this country as well. So, you know, we're seeing their authoritarianism kind of creep into all of these other elements. And like, this is a far-right foreign policy coming home to roost here, whether it be the effects on the Ukrainian people who had to flee to this country because of Russia's invasion, or domestic protests against our acts of aggression in the genocide in Gaza. That's what they're going to try to crack down on, dissent. We saw it when Mike Johnson shut down Al Green when he was doing his act of protest during the joint address. The cheers from the Republicans on that side of the aisle when they got security to escort him out, like that's kind of the authoritarianism that drives this administration.
Yep. And I guess, you know, we'll talk to Ryan Grimm about the flip-flopping on the tariffs. I mean, it really is astonishing what's happening with this. It is, of all the things that are going on, many are much worse for people, but this one is one of the most bizarre, unless you start to just contemplate the idea that this is just some type of scam. But we'll talk to Ryan Grimm about that. In the meantime, I'm not trying to do a theme here about conservatives and their ethno-nationalism or their lack of grasp on facts, on just basic things. But it just so happens about a month and a half ago, I guess it was, I did the Jubilee Surrounded show, which is where I sit in the middle of the circle and there are like 25 or 20, I can't remember how many it was, conservatives. They were young people. And there were a couple who I think, like, you know, sort of knew what they were talking about to a certain extent. They live in an information bubble. And so there was actually one guy who I talked to afterwards and showed him some of the stuff that I think comes up in the show. It's about an hour and a half long. We recorded like 3 hours of it. I've seen the edit. It's fine. I don't really remember what happened at the time, but this is a promo they have put out. It's not all as well, I don't know how to describe what you're about to see. There were a couple of people, like I said, who didn't have basic sort of facts about things that made it hard to sort of debate or argue with them. And then there were some who were just set in a certain perspective, and I didn't feel like it was even worth arguing with them because, you know, what are you going to say to someone who says what the second person in this clip does? But this is premiering on Sunday, March 9th. So in 2 days.
Every private and public sector gets tax cuts when you hire a person of color.
Government agencies don't pay taxes. Government agencies are funded by the government.
That is not true. That is not true.
And same with xenophobic national. Like, what's the problem with xenophobic nationalism? Don't you think that's better for Americans in general? Like
xenophobic nationalism is better.
We should have a coherent culture.
You and I have a fundamental disagreement. We will never see eye to eye on this. Hi, I'm Sam Seder, host of the Majority Report, and today I am surrounded by 20 conservatives.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean,
wait,
that was.
How did he deny that? How did he say that was untrue with such confidence when it's the most untrue thing I've ever heard in my life.
That was the part that I found really disturbing. Like, look, people make mistakes all the time.
Yes.
And we do this professionally and we make mistakes.
Yes.
And the only reason why I know this stuff is because I do it professionally and we read in, but the level of assuredness that this guy had, that the federal government, that federal agencies were getting tax breaks for hiring black people was astonishing.
Astonishing.
And you could see the look on my face. Like, I didn't know how to, I'm just like, can we fix this and edit? Like what? Like,
yeah.
I can't argue that they don't get tax cuts when they don't pay taxes. Like, but that was.
I love the girl who says, like, not just saying like we should be nationalistic, but saying xenophobically nationalistic.
Yes. Like, I wondered, like, I wanted to go up to her after. There was another guy. I wanted to go after her afterwards. Like, do you know what xenophobia means, right? Or no, or
probably not.
And there was another guy who, I think, as soon as he got to the table, like a bunch of the other people in the circle, like, oh no. Because they thought that like he was coming in nodding as to what that woman had said. And I think he was going to go further and they immediately voted him out. And so he never made it to the cut. But we'll talk more about it next week when we get the full thing out.
I'm so excited.
But, there were a couple of people who had some decent arguments and some people were, wanted to change the topic to like God and stuff like that I wasn't quite prepared for. I hadn't boned up on that, but we'll be out on Sunday. In a moment, we'll be talking to Ryan Grimm, co-founder and reporter at Dropsite News, co-host of Counterpoints. And I should say it'll be on Sunday on the Jubilee channel. So I don't know. We'll put a link in if we cut it up, or we'll put a link in the podcast and YouTube description. First, a couple of words from our sponsors. Delete Me makes it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches are common enough to make everyone vulnerable. Delete Me does all the hard work of wiping you and your family's personal information from data broker websites. Delete Me knows your privacy is worth protecting. Sign up and provide Delete Me with exactly what information you want deleted, and their experts take it from there. Delete Me sends you regular personalized privacy reports showing what info they found, where they found it, and what they removed. And understand, Delete Me is not just a one-time service. Delete Me is always working for you, constantly monitoring and removing the personal information you don't want on the internet, because they keep repopulating it as you go. And there's so many of these personal broker sites. I think it's pretty obvious in the job that we do, pretty hyper vigilant about trying to keep that information as off the internet as possible. I've been using Delete Me for, 8 years now, maybe 10. Actually, geez, I think it was when we moved over, 2013. Oh God, like 11 years, I think it's been. And they just recently came on as a sponsor, so I was happy to do it. I want to thank them for sponsoring today's episode. It's super easy to find this information online, folks, and it both protects you in situations like, where I don't want people to know my address or whatnot, but also it helps protect you from phishing scams, because they'll get some piece of information from a data broker and they'll combine it with something that they buy in the dark web, and then all of a sudden they have a complete package and they can really set you up. So take control of your data. Keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now at a special discount for our listeners, get 20% off your Delete Me plan by texting majority to 64,000. The only way to get 20% off is to text the word majority to the number 64,000. That's majority to 64000. Message and data rates may apply. Also, sponsoring the program today, one of our longest time sponsors, one of my favorites because of their politics, frankly, and their product. But it was their politics that I was like especially drawn to. SunsetLakeSebede.com. They have given tens of thousands of dollars to things like strike relief funds, refugee resettlement, Planned Parenthood, Give Directly. They have provided mutual aid up in Vermont. They were not as an organization, of course, but cheering on in some ways the protests against J.D. Vance. They support food pantries. I mean, just a great company and a great product. And they're here to help you with something that is important to everybody, and that is getting sleep. We all dread losing sleep. Daylight savings times is coming up. That means we lose an hour of sleep Sunday night. Is it Sunday night or Sunday morning? Saturday night, Sunday morning, whatever it is.
Whatever.
But if you're like me, that 1 hour can throw you off for days, sometimes weeks. Why? Because it throws my kids off. The cat's going to be weird. Everybody's freaked out. But there's good news. Sunset Lake Sebede can help you get better sleep and wake up feeling refreshed. Right now, all of their Sebede sleep products are 35% off when you check out with coupon code DAYLIGHT35. That's the number 35, DAYLIGHT35. Their sleep gummies are packed with Sebede, Sebe-N, and just a touch of melatonin if you want to help you drift off naturally. Or if you're sensitive to melatonin, try their Goodnight Oil. That's what I use. It's a tincture, and it's got Sebede and Sebe-N, and it is fantastic. I've been using their Goodnight Oil like literally since the day that they introduced that product. I was using the regular Sebede, but there's something with the addition of that Sebe-N that makes it really helpful in terms of sleeping. Don't let daylight savings time screw up your sleep schedule. Head over to sunsetlakesebede.com. Use the coupon code DAYLIGHT35, DAYLIGHT35 to save 35% on all participating sleep products. But hurry, this sale ends March 9th. That's Sunday at midnight Eastern time. See their site for additional terms and conditions. We got to take a quick break. We'll put that link, obviously, in the podcast and YouTube description. Take a quick break. And when we come back, Ryan Grimm, co-founder and reporter at Dropsite News, will be with us. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. Joining us now, the co-founder and reporter at Dropsite News, co-host of Counterpoints, and now like a major TikTok
just look out
TikToker, Ryan Grimm. Ryan, welcome back to the show.
Look out, young people.
Now, I noticed I want to talk about a TikTok I watched of yours, I guess yesterday or today. You're wearing the same outfit. Is this now like your uniform?
Different tie.
All right.
Do you do jeans?
Shirt even.
Are you a jeans guy with the?
He's wearing shorts underneath there.
Today I have jeans. So we did a Breaking Points this morning from home. So I try to look nice for the Breaking Points audience, and so I was already looking nice. I said, why not just share this with the Majority Report audience too?
We can pretend you did it for us. We don't have to. Let's start. Look, let's start. I want because I know there's a big Maggie Haberman piece out, and it sort of dovetails with what has happened with Elon Musk's control, not control of. Oh wow, nice lighting of Doge, as it were. But let's talk about this tariff thing, because this is getting. Bizarre on some level. Donald Trump passes essentially a change to NAFTA back in 2020, called it the USMCA. And it was a trade deal with Mexico and Canada, who, as far as I know, have been following that trade deal. I'm sure there's some disputes now and then. They get resolved. But and so on. And then he comes into office and he's like, I don't like that trade deal that I signed. I'm going to slap 25% tariffs on them. And then he says, I'm going to wait. I'm actually going to do it on Tuesday, but now I'm going to wait for a month from Tuesday to do the tariffs. And then he goes up in front of his, semi-State of the Union at the beginning of the week, says the tariffs are happening today and Tuesday, and the car makers love it. On Wednesday, he gives a waiver to all the car makers because apparently they loved it too much. And sometimes you don't want to get that close to something.
Yeah, too much winning.
And they got overwhelmed. They said, please, we love it so much, we don't want to be a part of it. And he said, okay. And then today, yesterday, he said, actually, we're going to wait another month. What is your most reasonable explanation of this?
I mean, I think all of the candidates have about equal weight at this point, right? Because it's so hard to try to figure out any kind of straight line strategy. Have you read Yanis Varoufakis's essay on Trump's tariff policy and his like economic grand vision? Yanis is an interesting guy. Yeah. Left-wing Greek finance minister for the radical when the radicals were in there for like 6 months, and kind of a man about YouTube.
We had him on, I think it was probably this time last year. Yeah. I think
interesting guy, and he attempts to take the dots that Trump has put out there and sketch out what kind of ideology might fit into it, and square it with things Trump has been saying throughout his entire life. The exact same things he's been saying about China. Like if you go back to the 80s, he was saying about Japan,
right?
They're going to eat our lunch, etc. But his love of tariffs has been consistent. His deficit fear mongering and stuff around the debt and the trade imbalances, like that's all been consistent. So Giannis's argument is he's trying to create turmoil around the world, which will lead to dollar appreciation, which will lead to basically more exports. The United States will be able to produce more exports by changing the kind of balance of payments. He thinks that these other countries are getting a free ride.
Dollar depreciation.
Depreciation.
Right.
Dyslexic.
Right. Right. I mean, so in other words,
makes it cheaper for us. Yeah.
If the dollar is worth less, it will increase our exports because the basically the price of our goods will go down if you're in a different country.
Yeah, and he thinks that being the world's reserve currency, this is Giannis's theory, is actually more of a burden than it is a benefit. And it's a burden because all of these central banks grab all of this American currency and they don't exchange it for their own currencies. And that artificially pushes the value of the dollar up, which then makes it harder for our manufacturing industry to sell to Europe. It makes it cheaper for us to buy from them, which means actually we're subsidizing their exporters. We get cheap crap out of it. And he thinks that has been a bad deal for the middle class. Like that. So that's the Giannis argument, that this is his analysis. If you'd flow from there, you would say, all right, well, he's creating all this chaos with Mexico and Canada to show Europe and China that he means business when he finally gets to it. But I would think that it would do the opposite, like that he looks like he's taking any power that his threats around tariffs had, like the power that he did have in January, is kind of gone, because who's going to take seriously his tariff threats anymore? So I think that's where the Giannis kind of assessment.
Well, that's the thing, is that
doesn't match up with what he's doing.
I've heard iterations of that theory that Giannis presented, and that I mean, it's a theory,
right,
but it doesn't feel like. But first off, like, why wouldn't you? And we should say the tariffs on China. He put 10% of tariffs on in 2019. Those have remained on, and they actually ended up costing farmers in some respect, because and frankly, other products that I can't remember what the designation is, but we have products that we actually have here sent to China to be processed and come back in, and then it raises the price for essentially American producers, in addition to the American consumers. So like, nobody benefits. The American producers of these goods do not benefit from the foreign tariffs. But putting that aside, I don't understand the interim step of doing it with Mexico and China. Mexico and Canada, who would be the last places you would want because of I think your cat is coming in. Okay, I thought that was no,
that is a cat. Hey, buddy.
Boom mic. That is a monster.
Yes. The potato.
I don't understand why you would do this first with Canada and Mexico, because that's like literally shooting yourself in the foot because of how much this stuff crosses the border. Products that are made in America, they go to Canada and then they come back, and then they go back and then they come back, because different parts of it are more suited to whatever their economy is. And then on top of which, I don't understand why you keep turning these on and off, because it makes it impossible for any business to plan anything. The only thing that it strikes me as is like, this is a pump and dump. Like
someone shorting the market, and this is
someone going long on something, someone going short on something, and then just selling with every announcement, knowing that these announcements are going to keep coming. Because outside of that, there's no other explanation for this.
At some point, it's going to be hard to sell and buy on them, because
nobody's going to believe it.
Nobody's going to believe it. So he's going to have to figure out other ways to like.
Do you think that's possible? I mean, because I look, we saw it with the crypto stuff. That clearly is David Sachs just getting a payday. And, somebody apparently knew beforehand, because somebody was leveraging like several $100 million on margin in the crypto market, at least. But it also just strikes me as
I think it's possible. Yeah.
But it can be both. I mean, I'm just trying to marry these two things with the Giannis Varoufakis theory about, his feeling that being the world's reserve currency is hurting us in negotiations. That could be the genesis of the idea, but his execution can be horrific, because we know that he's an insane person who wants to go after our allies first, because he thinks that's a show of strength, probably to the rest of the world, but he doesn't have the discipline to follow through on it.
That's where crypto. He's very mad at BRICS.
Mad at BRICS too. But that's where crypto can come in, right? Because if we're talking about his he's bought into this idea that that the United States being the leader for the world's currency and the dollar determining value, if he feels that's an unfair deal, hey, we can get a crypto reserve and essentially, right, like weaken the dollar ourselves. This is what Milei did in Argentina, I guess, just without the fiat currency piece.
Could have something to do with it. I don't. My guess of reading him is that he doesn't take crypto seriously and is just, but he's fine to just let his cronies just rip people off with it. It's like, just go have fun with it. It doesn't seem like the kind of thing that he.
I mean, he does pump and dumps for himself, right?
Yes, exactly. Tell me how I can make a buck off of this.
Yeah.
NFT. He does the NFTs, and he's there's a scam, he's in on it.
The whole thing honestly feels like a less entertaining version, or at least a lot of this stuff feels like a less entertaining version of The Sopranos. I mean, it's just, he's just running it like a mafia don. And as long as we all have our own territory, and as long as I get a taste, you guys go to town. If it doesn't cost me,
it's a bust out.
Honestly, it sort of feels like that. All right, let's, I guess, we'll see what happens next with tariffs. I mean, somebody out there has got to be seeing in some market. I don't know if it's like, maybe oil or lumber or construction or, I'm not sophisticated enough.
Canadian currency, maybe. I don't know.
I mean, honestly, somebody out there is making a killing off of this, I think. And I have a feeling they're the initials of their last name could be Trump in some fashion. So, but before we get to Musk and this new story about, from Maggie Haberman, let's talk about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I want to play this clip from, and this is the first I heard of like them coming after the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It was on the Vox Populi, Joe Rogan, where he invites all of his billionaire friends on to basically present conspiracy theories or just out and out lies or mechanisms in which to get popular support against things that end up protecting the populace, essentially. Here's Mark Andreessen explaining to Joe Rogan, a wrapped Joe Rogan, about debanking.
Position of deciding who gets money. It's time to unleash economic growth.
Elon explained that there's more agencies than there have been years of the United States.
Correct. Yeah, 450 federal agencies and 2 new ones a year.
Pause it for 1 second. I know this is not relevant, but Ryan, you've been working as a Washington bureau chief for years. Could you tell us the relevance of the historically, of the proportion of agencies to years that a government has existed? Because this is, what is that quotient called?
The Andreessen rule. Andreessen rule. Yeah.
I mean, what's this, just like topsy-turvy bar trivia? There's also more members of Congress than the amount of years that the United States has been in existence. So checkmate. I mean, I don't know what this AI is supposed to prove. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, it depends on what you consider to be there's no accounting for size. Fish and Wildlife Agency here, small business, just saying a big number like that is kind of absurd.
Exactly. Yeah. If you put all those nickels together, it would reach to the moon.
50 federal agencies and 2 new ones a year. And then my favorite twist is we have this thing called independent federal agencies. So like, for example, we have this thing called the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, CFPB, which was it's sort of Elizabeth Warren's personal agency that she gets to control.
Financial
and it's an independent agency that just gets to run and do whatever it wants, right? And if you read the Constitution, like there is no such thing as an independent agency, and yet there it is.
What does her agency do?
Whatever she wants.
What does it do, though?
Basically, terrorize financial institutions, prevent fintech, prevent new competition, new startups that want to compete with the big banks.
Really?
Oh yeah, 100%.
How so?
Just like terrorizing anybody who tries to do anything new in financial services. And
can you give me an example?
Well, you said debanking. This is where a lot of the debanking comes from.
Yeah, let's pause it.
Just to highlight one hilarious absurdity there. His argument there is that Elizabeth Warren set up this agency to protect Wall Street from competition against other banks. those are words that just came out of his mouth to another human being who he expected to believe that.
Do you think, I mean, everything he's saying here is almost 180 degrees
Backwards.
from the truth.
Yep.
Do you think he is consciously lying, or do you think he's just this stupid? He just knows, like, it's against my interests, so I'm just gonna say stuff. And I mean, because does he know that Joe Rogan's this stupid? Because if I'm Mark Andreessen and I'm on the biggest podcast in the country, I might be afraid to say something so untrue, because if the person across from me goes like, hey, wait a second, Elizabeth Warren, she's built her whole career on things like antitrust and attacking banks. You're saying that she's actually protecting banks? And hey, wait a second, she's a senator. She doesn't run this agency. Hey, wait a second. Like, he doesn't seem to be afraid of this.
I think some of it is he thinks he can just get away with it. But I think some of it is he has personally been investigated by the CFPB, and his friends have, and not just the CFPB, it's actually more the Federal Reserve and the SEC. They have gone after different scam operations that he has put his money into. And I'm sure that has been very difficult for him. And I'm sure he has been in calls with his lawyers who are describing to him what's being done. And he's absolutely enraged and feels deeply victimized by this and feels a genuine sense of injustice, because these people surround themselves with sycophants who are all constantly telling them that their great ideas about building an island in the middle of the Pacific are amazing, and you're such a genius. So to have some pencil pushing accountant like Rohit Chopra come in and send him a letter and say, by the way, all this stuff you're doing is illegal. Like, I'm sure there is a genuine visceral sense of injustice that then blinds him to the obvious reality that we can see. That's like, no, what you said just doesn't make any sense.
I mean, it's like that noise that you get where you're watching one of those movies where somebody is next to an explosion and you just hear that.
Yes.
Yeah. But can I just ask?
And nobody must correct him in his world ever.
But so he's conflating here the rules that protect people from debanking with the.
Well,
but I'm asking.
To do that, yeah.
But I'm just asking Ryan, like, he's conflating the rules that the CFPB had that protected people from getting debanked with the enforcement actions against him personally, and conflating those two things. Okay.
Yeah, let's continue on, because that's where he's going to next.
Okay.
Oh yeah, 100%.
How so?
Just by terrorizing anybody who tries to do anything new in financial services. And
can you give me an example?
Well, debanking. This is where a lot of the debanking comes from. Is these agencies. So debanking is when you as either a person or your company are literally kicked out of the banking system.
Like they did to Kanye.
Exactly, like they did to Kanye. My partner Ben's father has been debanked.
Really?
We had an employee who
for what?
For having the wrong politics, for saying unacceptable things. Under current banking regulations, here's a great thing. Under current banking regulations, after all the reforms of the last 20 years, there's now a category called a politically exposed person, PEP. And if you are a PEP, you are required by financial regulators to kick them off of to kick them out of your bank. You're not allowed to have them.
What if you're politically on the left?
Well, that's fine.
No,
because they're not politically exposed.
So no one on the left gets debanked?
I have not heard of a single instance of anybody on the left getting debanked.
Can you tell me what the person that you know did, what they said that got them debanked?
Oh, well, I mean, David Horowitz is a right wing. He's pro-Trump. I mean, he's said all kinds of things. He's been very anti-Islamic.
We don't need to hear, I think, any more of the story. So, okay.
Let's do the PEP real quick for people who are curious about that. So a politically exposed person, you can just Google this and find it out. That means if you are a mayor, a member of Congress, a banking regulator, like let's say you're Rohit Chopra, for instance, at the CFPB, and you are susceptible to bribery, like not susceptible, but like you're the kind of person that might be bribed, then there's a higher level of scrutiny that a bank has to do to make sure that these people aren't doing money laundering or like washing bribes through their bank accounts. That's what a PEP is. It has zero to do with anybody's politics at all. Like
Is it called a political? What did he call it? A
PEP, politically exposed person. It's an actual.
Okay,
concept.
so politically exposed in the sense that you could be, like, I guess, subject to bribery or something like that, and you have a vested stake in. It makes you just more, I guess, vulnerable.
You're a higher
to
risk.
financial exploitation.
Same as if you live in Sinaloa and are conducting all of your transactions in crypto. As a bank, you have to have heightened scrutiny of that customer because we have know your customer laws, and that's where he gets caught. His companies like to work with those people. They create workarounds for those people, and they don't like that the CFPB or the SEC or the Fed are coming in and being like, so you're moving a couple $1 million of crypto from Mexico over to Lebanon and then into this New York account. Like, who is this? They're like, how dare you ask who this is? These are freedom-loving Mexicans or whatever they are. And then they'll shut their account down and they'll be like, I got debanked for saying something about Trump.
But because
they're also Trump supporters. So they're like, that's why it was. It's like, no, that account got taken down because it was moving crypto for the cartels.
Now, there is such a thing as debanking, though, insofar as you can lose your account if, I mean,
what's happened, like Laura Loomer, it happened to her. Like the Canadian truckers, I don't know how good an example they are because they're in Canada, but like people have lost,
I think.
Yeah, people have lost bank accounts because of their political activity. And the CFPB came in and said, you can't do that to Laura Loomer. Like, Laura Loomer has a right to Uber Eats and PayPal and anything else.
Because it affects Venmo and PayPal too, right? Like it affects other payments that are not even just your Chase or your Bank of America or whatever, right?
But I just want to be clear here. You're saying that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau did the 180-degree opposite. They had a rule that you specifically cannot debank somebody because of political speech.
Right.
You have this other regulators that are saying we have politically exposed people so that we money laundering and treasury and whatnot. SEC probably looks into these things to make sure that you're not money laundering. Just like you can't take $10,000 out of your bank in cash and not have the bank automatically tell the government that's how Rush Limbaugh got caught with his Oxy habit, but. So the CFPB had a rule that was exactly 180 degrees opposite of what Andreessen and Rogan were talking about.
And took heat from the left, because people on the left said to Rohit Chopra, why are you doing this? We should be able to debank these white supremacists, Proud Boys or whatever. And Chopra said, no, that's not what the law is. The law is you can't discriminate for any political reason, even if these are odious political views. So he even took heat for doing the opposite of what they said he's doing.
So in fact, as of 48 hours ago, let's say, that law was the law of the land, that you cannot debank somebody for politics. Well, thank goodness that law is there so that Republicans do not feel like if they go on a white supremacy spree or something like that, they'll get
go to whatever
debanked.
Conference you want. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you can swipe your card at the Marriott for the KKK, and you're going to be
as long as the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has that essential regulation, as it were. Except yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us.
So yesterday, the United States Senate goes to the floor with what's called a CRA, which does not require 60 votes because it's a quote unquote privileged resolution. Any rule that is implemented within the last year, roughly, of an administration is subject to being overturned by the next Congress. And the reason this came out in the December of 2024 isn't because Chopra waited until after the election and did this thing that the right would like. He did this right away, but he got pushback from Wall Street, and so he's been fighting with Wall Street for 4 years, and it took him that long in the courts and going back and forth in the regulatory process. And so he finally gets it done, and it applies to any financial app that has more than 50 million transactions. So that's how it ropes in Venmo, PayPal, all of these other ones, and it would rope in Twitter if it does its what Elon Musk says it's going to do, it would rope in WhatsApp, Mark Zuckerberg's thing, once WhatsApp starts allowing financial exchanges. And so they put a resolution on the floor to repeal this thing. And every single Republican, except for Josh Hawley, voted to repeal it. So they got enough votes. Now it goes over to the House. And we'll see, because Laura Loomer is whipped up into a frenzy now. Because she is, a lot of these right-wing commentators will do whatever Trump says. That's their ideology. They're pro tariffs on Tuesday, and then they're against them if he lifts them.
Right.
Loomer not only is personally debanked, but she's also happy to go after Musk or Trump, even if
Well, we should also say it's because she got jettisoned from Trump's orbit by Milo Yiannopoulos, who was hired to.
I hit it and quit it. What do you want me to tell you? Why doesn't she call up Trump?
I don't know if she can get through to Trump anymore.
I don't take calls from people with that kind of cosmetic surgery.
So there's been an effort to sideline her. But anyway, so she still has influence on the right, and so so now it goes over to the House, and if she can find and the rest of the debanking folks can find 4 or 5 Republicans, they can stop this thing. Because the other thing that PayPal and the others don't like about that rule, it's 2 things. It's you can't debank, and if you're going to be one of these apps that does banking, you have to have a fraud dispute mechanism, because there's so much fraud in these things. And they don't want that either.
Amazing.
Yes.
We don't want there to be a requirement that we have an apparatus to address the fact that people might have been defrauded via our app or because of our app. I mean, never mind just via, but maybe somebody hijacked somebody's account or whatnot.
Think about customer support on Twitter right now. For anybody who's gotten locked out of their account or had some crypto scam take their account over, it's utterly impossible unless you get somebody to go directly to Elon Musk to get it resolved. And so imagine they're doing financial transactions,
right?
And you try to appeal a charge that's on your app. Forget it.
And we should also say, I think the existence of a regulation from a Consumer Financial Protection Bureau on a app or an entity, some type of banking thing, I would imagine within the context of any type of legal cases sets a precedent as to what that app constitutes, right? Because they want to pretend we're not a bank. We're not doing any banking, even though they're doing banking stuff. And if they're being regulated by an agency that regulates banks, it becomes a sort of de facto mechanism of defining them. So they don't even want the precedent that you're allowed to regulate these apps. And the longer time they have to develop without regulation, the harder it becomes to regulate them, because they're exactly. And that is, that's fascinating.
Zuckerberg went on Rogan too and said, I have no idea why this agency would have any interest in us whatsoever. And I interviewed Rohit Chopra, and he was like, maybe Zuckerberg has forgotten, but they tried to launch a currency called Libra. There was that whole thing, 2020, they launched a currency. It's what do you mean you don't know why the CFPB or some other financial regulator might have an interest? And WhatsApp is actively talking about letting you move money between users. What are you
Ryan, I cannot believe that you are even implying that there have been multiple billionaires going on to Joe Rogan to launder their essentially bucket list of deregulation that's going to allow them to make even more money at the expense of consumers and citizens.
I wish Rogan at some point would be like, all of these billionaires really hate the CFPB. Maybe I should look into it.
No.
Because their curiosity,
they're his friends.
Their curiosity is all about that's what he traffics in the UFO stuff or any the conspiracy theories that he engages in. They're all just very
yesterday they
non-threatening.
They were talking about how Frank Zappa was an Intel asset.
Yeah,
that's where that's you lose me at that one.
But this is when
was a good one.
When you want to like kind of just keep people in a constant state of conspiracism, but a conspiracism that doesn't actually threaten power in any way. I mean, that's what the Rogan podcast is at this point. It's a numbing kind of simulated attempt to look like you're challenging power. But like Zuckerberg came on and said almost identically what Mark Andreessen did. And then there was reporting that said that in November, Andreessen is on Meta's board, that the two of them met to discuss their new content moderation policies. And it seems abundantly clear, I think, that they're both well aware that they're going on Rogan to launder their project, and they have deep messaging coordination on this front.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's working a lot of decent, at least judging from the reaction of our audience over Breaking Points. He does seem to be losing people. Like your point is getting through to people that saw him as iconoclastic and like running up against, the establishment, now see him as doing the opposite.
Yeah. I mean, I think eventually this stuff catches up with you on some level. But hope springs eternal that it catches up even faster. Okay. Speaking of catching up, last week in multiple court cases, Elon Musk, well, let's go back 3 weeks. Who is in charge of Doge?
Yes.
Trump spokeswoman, I can't remember her name, at the podium. Yes, says, we know who's in charge of Doge, but we're not at liberty to tell you from this podium. We'll tell you in private. And then, and everybody thinks it's Elon Musk because Elon Musk has been delivering a report to the president in front of all the cabinet members at the cabinet meeting about Doge. So like he just seems to be some random guy who picked up on the Doge newsletter and said, let me be the one to deliver all the info. It's on the Doge newsletter. So then they said it was a woman from, I can't remember, some lobbyist or executive. She was in charge of Doge. And when she was reached on when she was reached on the phone on vacation in Mexico, she's like, oh, I didn't realize this was public. That she was in charge of Doge. Sounds sort of like she didn't know. I think she was like on the set of the next White Lotus shooting or something like that. And so then during the State of the Union, and then there's court cases where judges are saying, hey, Elon Musk has not been confirmed by the Senate. He's not been vetted. He's not like a government employee. How can he be in charge of Doge? And in the court cases, the government's saying, oh, he's not in charge of Doge. He's just hanging around a lot. And then Trump on Tuesday night during the almost State of the Union says, Elon Musk is in charge of Doge. and surely to be brought up in court cases. And then, I mean, this is just insanity. He then says, this is yesterday. This is what he says. Number 2, this.
1 second.
He basically tries to walk back, but can only do it halfway, it appears. Go ahead.
I want the cabinet members to keep good people. I don't want to see a big cut where a lot of good people are cut. I want the cabinet members to keep the good people, and the people that aren't doing a good job, that are unreliable, don't show up to work, etc. Those people can be cut. So I had a meeting and I said, I want the cabinet members go first, keep all the people you want, everybody that you need. And it would be better if they were there for 2 years instead of 2 weeks, because in 2 years they'll know the people better. But I want them to do the best job they can. When we have good people, that's precious, that's very important. And we want them to keep the good people. And so we're going to be watching them, and Elon and the group are going to be watching them. And if they can cut, it's better. And if they don't cut, then Elon will do the cutting.
Okay, so now it sounds again like Elon is in charge of Doge. It also sounds like there's pushback. I mean, I have to say, I think the smartest thing I've ever heard Donald Trump say is probably better if you assess the quality of the work of these people over the course of 2 years as opposed to 2 weeks. Because that's a hard time to sort of judge whether they're doing a good job if you're just new on the job in the first place and you don't even know what they're doing. Let's talk about like what this story that's just broke today by Maggie Haberman.
Yeah. So on Wednesday night, he called a cabinet meeting, and kind of a rushed cabinet meeting, and gets everybody plus Elon Musk into the White House on Thursday. And John Swan and Haberman have details from the cabinet meeting after the cameras and the photographers left.
And that's what Trump was just referring to, essentially, I guess, where he told the people in the cabinet, cut, but don't cut. And if you don't cut, then Elon and his group will cut his group.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was the premise of the meeting. And Haberman and Swan can lay that out. The two kind of big kind of nuggets that are in this piece, which is a fun read, are Elon Musk going to war with Trent Duffy, the reality TV
Sean
star.
Duffy.
Sean Duffy. Sean Duffy.
I mean, another douchey name that could have definitely been. I'm just kidding. There's many great Seans and Trents.
Yes. So he was congressman. Now he's transportation secretary, and he also got into it with Rubio. With Duffy, he got into it over air traffic controllers. Yep. Duffy's like, I have multiple airline crashes.
Can I read this quote?
Yeah.
Can I read this quote? Yeah. Just moments before the blow up with Mr. Rubio, Mr. Musk and the Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, went back and forth about the state of the Federal Aviation Administration's equipment for tracking airplanes and what kind of fixes needed. Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, jumped in to support Musk. By the way, Lutnick has a bunch of investments in commercial space satellites that is very relevant here. Mr. Duffy said the young staff of Doge were trying to lay off air traffic controllers. What am I supposed to do? Mr. Duffy said. I have multiple plane crashes to deal with now, and your people want me to fire air traffic controllers? Mr. Musk told Mr. Duffy that his assertion was a lie. Mr. Duffy insisted it was not. He had heard it from them directly. Mr. Musk, asking who was fired, said, give me their names, tell me their names, whatever. They go on, essentially. But it's basically a pushback
and Duffy says, I can't give you a name because I stopped them from being fired.
Right. Yeah. And so but we also saw reporting that Musk was trying to put SpaceX people in place here. So he's being disingenuous, even in private, apparently, to Duffy.
And then he really ripped into Rubio, and Rubio gave it to him back, because Rubio was like, apparently, according to the article, pissed off about everybody at USAID getting fired, and there's an agency that's supposed to be under him, and he should have some direction over it.
Marco.
Musk told him, all you are is good on TV. Sounded like it got really personal. They said that Trump was just sitting back like this, just watched them go at it for a long time, and then finally Trump comes in.
I'm like Lincoln. I like to have a cabinet of rivals.
That's right. And at the end, then Trump says Marco's doing a good job. He's on TV a lot. He's traveling a lot. He's got a lot going on. Cut him some slack. And then Trump did tell the cabinet, which we'll see, I'm sure, in legal filings going forward, that firings are up to the cabinet, not up to Elon. Who's Elon anyway, since he's not in charge of Doge?
But didn't he just say in that clip we just saw, but if you don't do it, then Elon will come in and do it.
Yeah.
So he's the backup.
So that'll
now.
also be in the counterfiling. Yeah.
Did Trump has he just lost his mind? Is that the explanation that we have here? I mean, we're trying to make sense of all this.
He also might just love the chaos and the attention and the drama. Like, he's a drama queen. He always has been.
I just don't see why he would care. Like, I mean, I feel it seems to me that his biggest loyalty, to the extent that he has there's anything curtailing him or anything that he's accountable to, is just he cannot afford to lose Elon Musk's sort of threat over the legislative branch to unleash unlimited money. That to me seems to me to be the only thing that would ever incentivize or disincentivize Trump to do anything, because with that, he is unaccountable on in every possible way.
It's an unprecedented level of power to have over your own party. To have a very credible threat of several $1 million getting dropped on you for any deviation. Yeah.
I mean, let me ask you about that budget resolution that was now 2 weeks ago. But my sense was that nobody thought that budget resolution would pass, that it was just going to be too difficult. And we saw the implication of Elon Musk's money right there, it seems to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Trump made a couple calls and ended up with only Thomas Massie opposed to it. And he's his own guy. Like he's like a Ron Paul type. And yeah, all the rest of them got in line. It was people on the Hill were surprised. At one point, Mike Johnson even called off the vote and sent everybody home. Like that's how dead in the water it was. But yes, people are like, wait, do I really want to? Is he really going to spend $5 million on me? And
why
turn off my Twitter account?
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about this. We don't have too much time, but a week or two ago, we saw reports that Richie Torres was, I'm trying to remember what the words were, resented and objected to the implication that the Democrats weren't doing anything. Hakeem Jeffries has had a problem with the groups and happy that he's being protested from the extreme left and the extreme right.
The extreme left, like move on.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And then we had the State of the Union. Al Green, among others, protested. Al Green was the most sort of vocal about it. He was protesting cuts to Medicaid. And apparently, the Democrats' establishment leadership is very mad about this. And this also comes on the heels, obviously, of the reporting about Chuck Schumer deciding we want Slotnick in there, who seemed to feel that the best way to appeal to a national audience is to say that she's glad Reagan was president when she was 12 and not Donald Trump. She was 12, is my understanding. I was older. I missed voting for Reagan in the second time by about 3 weeks. So I'm a little older than she is. And I can tell you that's a very savvy person to be excited that Ronald Reagan was president when she was 12. I mean, good for her. And so she must really have a sense of what people her age were excited about. But give me your sense of this, because you and I were part of this in the aughts, where we watched the Democratic Party completely be docile and sort of play possum, even though they weren't playing, really, just be possums for the Republicans. And it was in the wake of 9/11. There was almost like the country was still in a state of shock in many respects. But how can they think this is a good idea? And they don't seem to have a plan.
No, their plan was laid out right by James Carville in that New York Times op-ed, where he said Democrats need to take a strategic retreat or whatever, and just kind of step back and just let Republicans run the country and just see what happens. And I think that kind of advice is lapped up by Hakeem Jeffries, who doesn't really, want to do anything. The party was so flat on its back in the time that you're talking about, if you remember, that a nobody governor of Vermont named Howard Dean was able to almost snatch the Democratic nomination because people just wanted somebody who would tell George Bush that he sucked.
Yep.
And he was willing to do it. And so he very nearly pulled it off. As a result of that, didn't quite get there, which is the history, always the history of the Democratic Party. They just managed to hold on to power within their own party and then lose it to the other party. So yeah, we're ripe for a Howard Dean-like figure who is not actually that radical.
Howard Dean's politics were not particularly, they were on the sort of conservative Dem. He was against the war, but he was also sort of like pretty conservative on a lot of other things that didn't really play that much in that race. It was really his big innovation was that he was the first one to get small donors.
Yeah, right. He had that baseball bat, and he would.
And the 50-state strategy too, right? Like
that was how he ran for DNC chair.
Yeah.
After that, kind of amazing that he doesn't get any credit, by the way, for being DNC chair. Basically the only time that Democrats won
with the Obama, 06, right?
06 and 08.
Yeah.
Like, pretty
good years for them.
But, yeah.
So what do you think happens now? I mean, what is your sense? Are you hearing stuff? I mean, it does not feel, do we want to play this clip of Swazi?
I didn't end up finding a good soundbite for that, but like I listened to a little of Tom Swazi's town hall yesterday, which he held. He was one of the 10 Democrats that voted to censure Al Green. And it was a variety of different callers people who called into his town hall, outraged over not pushing back against Trump enough, and also specifically outraged of voting to censure Al Green. And he's going back and forth with them, and he's like, some of these people in this town hall aren't even my constituents or whatever. But they're feeling the heat, and like, this isn't something that we're imagining, right? There's been multiple instances of polling showing how Democratic voters and lean Democrats, it's a majority position that they don't think Democratic leadership is meeting this moment. And then there was a poll that came out from the liberal firm Blueprint, Politico put it out there, that showed that it's the plurality position that the Democratic Party has no strategy whatsoever for responding to Trump. Only 10% said the party had a solid technique for dealing with Trump. And this is coming from a liberal firm that is backed by Reid Hoffman.
I think if Bernie Sanders were like 10 years younger, he could actually probably win the nomination this time around.
Yeah,
because you'd have enough partisan Democrats who are like, you know what, let's try this.
I mean, we may be seeing it in New York. Mamdani is polling very well in New York. Andrew Cuomo's just jumped into the race. And Cuomo, obviously has a lot of name recognition and a lot of sort of relationships, and his father, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see. But Mamdani is doing quite well in the polling, and I think it's a reflection of sort of normie Democrats going, we need something. I mean, the amazing thing is that you've always, like, it seems to me quite obvious that a plan is better than no plan, right? I don't remember who it was that said that, but a plan always beats no plan. Always. Because if you have a plan, even if it is a bad one, at one point you can adjust. If you have no plan, you have no idea. You're always starting at zero. And are you hearing anything in terms of like people are like there is a broad-based problem with the leadership either in the House or in the Senate? I mean, somebody told me that a Talking Points Memo podcast, which is, I think like about as sort of like solidly normie Dem as you can get. They were talking about Chuck Schumer being in danger of being knocked off in 2028 when he runs again. And I mean, from Talking Points Memos podcast to God's ears, but is there a sense that, I mean,
there's also chatter, you would know this better, but there's chatter in Brooklyn that Hakeem Jeffries could actually be vulnerable this time. Like if they can find the right candidate, because they've wanted to challenge him, but he's got the machine locked down. He's a good local politician, so he's got, obviously has the money and the endorsements. So the left kind of never came for him in that district, even though he like baits them, like, come on, bring it. What do you got?
It's a different. His district is an interesting district. It's almost a shape of like a a fat boomerang, and it goes from like almost like I think to Brighton Beach almost all the way around the outer boroughs of Brooklyn, and then back into places like I think it goes as far as Fort Greene. And so and these are a lot. There's gentrification that's happening there. There's like, if you get out towards Coney Island, there's a lot of like sort of Russian immigrants who are rather conservative in some respects. I mean, so it's a very mixed. And then in between, you have a lot of immigrant populations and Hasidic Jews, and it's a wide mix of voters, and it would be interesting to see if somebody could try and knock them off. I mean, you've got the Hasidic community that provides a very reliable voting block because they're fundamentalists. They're told what to do by their Rebbe, and they go.
And that's tens of thousands of votes there.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like you're spotting. Yeah, he's spotted several tens of thousands of votes, which makes a challenge like insanely impossible because you then have to beat him by like 20 or 30 points. But if those outer boroughs are frustrated enough by the direction of the Democratic Party, you could see a change election being at least conceivably winnable. But yes, there is. But you can't beat somebody with nobody. And this is where the AIPAC and DMFI, route of the left in 2022 and 24 in kind of killing in the crib that energy comes into effect because if the squad grew from 2018 to 2020, they grew. 2022 grew again, but not quite as much because of $30 to $50 million spent knocking people like Andy Levin out of office. And then 2024, they threw that $100 million in to kind of shrink it back down. And so there's just less of a base on which to launch any kind of insurgency.
And we should say Hakeem Jeffries, a huge
helped organize that. Yeah.
Huge funding from AIPAC.
Yeah. And do you think? Sorry to add to that. Do you think that Hakeem Jeffries? This is a theory Matt kind of floated, and I'm trying to build it out. That there's a difference in between how Pelosi does politics because she came in a pre-Citizens United time, and this is not to lionize her, but to say she's a bit more partisan. And how Jeffries in that kind of era and that type of Democrat has come up in the last 15 years with unlimited money in politics, and that's the only game they can play. Is that something we could kind of
that's an interesting point. That's an interesting point because you could even take it further back to her upbringing in Baltimore under her machine politician dad, who taught her that, making sure that the trash is getting picked up and that, people are getting the social services they need and that you're giving like no-show jobs to the right people. And, she would go around with it as like a 12-year-old with like index cards of like who's on the machine's good list, who's on the machine's bad list, and doling out favors to the good ones. And so in that sense, you really had to work, block by block, which then she kind of brought more nationally. And yeah, if you're Hakeem Jeffries, you're trying to raise money by the hundreds of thousands. And certainly you're more detached too.
Right.
Like the machine politicians, they had their finger on the pulse, if nothing else.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, it'd be interesting.
They had their fingers around some necks too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Ryan Grimm, I guess we'll wait and see if there's if the stirrings. I mean, I think, Chuck Schumer strikes me as somebody who's very, very sensitive to the idea of being primaried. And rightly so. It's a much trickier thing on a Senate level from being, if he starts to alienate normie Dems, he really neutralizes the advantage he has from being from New York City. And things can happen upstate if you're not killing it in New York City. If you're Chuck Schumer as in a Democratic primary, sometimes it's enough to make him worried. Like the Baileys are sitting there and they're going like, "Is everything okay?"
Yes, they are.
We shall see. Ryan Grimm, always a pleasure.
Likewise.
Thanks, Ryan.
See you guys.
All right, folks. Let's take a quick break, head into the fun half. Still have hour 10 of the fun half today. Just a reminder, it is your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free show free of commercials, but you also get the fun half. And you can IM us and, you call into the program. Well, I mean, people call in when it's live anyways. And be a part of the program. Give us your 2 cents. Show us a thing or two. Et cetera, et cetera. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, hot chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Check out the AM Quickie. Hard to keep up with all the news these days. AM Quickie helps you get about 5 minutes worth of an email blast 3 times a week. Great way to stay in the know, get a sense of what the broad outlines, stories, and it is, from a Majority Report type of perspective. ESVN on hiatus. Matt, Left Reckoning.
Yeah, Left Reckoning. This weekend, patreon.com/Left Reckoning, our Sunday show, going to be with Owen Higgins talking about his book, Owned, where I don't know if he brought it up when he was on this program, but one of the things he said was David Sachs was the connecting tissue between Matt Taibbi and Elon Musk, which I thought was kind of interesting because Sachs used to follow me on Twitter before I said something nasty to one of his only followers can reply tweets before. But check that out, patreon.com/Left Reckoning to hear that conversation.
Interesting. I did not know that. I mean, Sachs was involved in call-in too, right? That whole thing.
Yep.
And I think
he was he had his eye on the sort of independent media sphere.
I think we almost got brought into that, and I think my attitude probably towards stuff like that probably inhibit.
Think of all the opportunities we've blown by being a little bit nasty.
What are you gonna do?
I don't care.
Who cares?
Well, maybe we'll do some more of that in the fun half.
Also,
Burning
don't forget
Bridges hour.
Exactly.
That's my favorite time of the day.
August 9th, March 9th. That Jubilee will be out. We'll maybe cover a little bit on Monday. Quick break. Fun half. 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go wow. What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second.
The Majority Report.
Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
Nomiki.
You did it. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false.
No, I'm sorry. Women's.
Stop talking for a second and let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7-8?
Yes.
Hi, me? This me?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello? Is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? No sound. Every single freaking day. What's on your mind?
Sports. We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm gonna go throw up.
Who libertarians?
They're so stupid, though.
Common sense says, of course.
Gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him!
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge met.
I'm positively quivering. I believe 96, I want to say.
857-210-35 501 1/2 3/8
9/11, for instance.
$3,400, $1,900.
5, 4, $3 trillion sold. It's a zero-sum game.
Actually, you're making me think less of it.
But let me say this. Poop.
You call it satire, Sam goes, it's satire.
On top of it all?
Yeah.
My favorite part about you is just like every day, all day, like everything you do